Hello everyone, this is Jeff Twardowski with You Be Successful. In this video, I'll show you how to create your first Domino application. We only have one assumption with this video: access to the Domino Designer on your desktop to create your first Domino application. Let's get started. You should have seen the demo application we're going to create. If not, look for a link below or on the screen. I recommend that you watch it first. How to use the Domino Designer. Start the Domino Designer. Double-click on the HCL Domino Designer icon, or double-click on the HCL Notes icon. Select Open. Select Domino Designer. When the Domino Designer starts, an abundance of information is displayed on the screen. Do we need all this information to move forward? Let's clean this up a little bit. Select Windows, Open Perspective, select Forms and Views. Notice many of the screen elements disappear. Doesn't mean the elements are gone forever. They are just out of sight to minimize distractions. If you need the previous screen elements, go back to Windows, Open Perspective, select Domino Designer. The home page of the Domino Designer has links to help you get started. These links include creating applications, editing existing applications, creating and managing working sets. The homepage also includes links to external resources: Domino Designer product documentation, OpenNTF, xpages.info. These are great resources when you're ready to learn more. My favorite is OpenNTF.org. This link is to our open source community. Select for new users to learn more about Domino Designer. My recommendation is to learn everything you can here before moving on to the next tab. This next tab provides you with information about Xpages. The last tab covers mobile application design. There's another section, Learn More. That's a lot of information just to get started. We're not going to cover everything, just enough to get you started. Let's investigate Help. Select Help in the menu. Select Help Contents. Think of these sections as books. I'm a big proponent of utilizing Help, so much so that I have multiple monitors on my desktop and I keep one monitor just for my help documents. If I ever need to look up information in Help, I don't have to dig underneath the windows to find it. Here's the HCL Domino Designer Basic User Guide and Reference. What's new with HCL Domino Designer 11 for developers? Application design, Domino query language, formula language, Lotus script language, writing notes in Domino applications that can function in HCL Nomad is limited to the features found in the HCL Notes Basic. These features include Lotus script, formula, forms, views, subforms, and frame sets. Items to stay away include Java, Xpages, JavaScript, and web-based items. There are two choices to create the base for our first application. Select File, New, Application to open the New Application dialog box, or press Ctrl-N to open the New Application dialog box. If your organization has a development server, you can select that here, or we can develop our first application locally on our workstation. Provide a title for the application. Problems and answers. While the file name can stay in this format, I think shortening it makes sense. Remove the spaces and the word "and." A file name in this format will create the application in the Notes data directory. All the system applications are located here. I recommend creating a subdirectory to separate your applications from the system applications. Click this icon to see the file structure. Follow the path to the data directory. While there are several subdirectories listed here, I suggest we create a new one for our stuff. Let's make that directory dev. Don't forget to add the backward slash at the end of the word dev so the system will know the difference between the directory and the file name. There's a list of templates here at the bottom to start the application. Select blank. Select OK. Notice on the left-hand side is our application. Open Explorer. Go to your Notes data directory. Your path may differ depending upon the installation process used by your organization. See the new dev directory? Open the dev directory. There is our problem and answer application we just created. Return to the Domino Designer to create the first form. Select the New Form button. The New Form dialog box should display our first form, type, problems and answers. Aliases are an alternate name for the form. Aliases provide us with an alternate reference that we can use programmatically, thus allowing us to change the form name without impacting any of our programming. Type P&A for the alias. The last block is our comment. Comments are a great place to document any details about the form. Type our first form. Select OK. Domino Designer creates a blank form. I recommend hitting the Enter key 3 times to add some blank lines on the form the first time. I'm sure you're thinking this is an odd way to start creating a form. The Domino Designer will remember any font and size changes in a specific location. This causes a unique situation. Most of the time, the first task we perform is to create a title on our form. We like it to look nice. We change the font size, center it, add bold, underlining. We can even change which font we use. Without the 3 lines at the top, the only way to move to the next line is to hit the Enter key. Domino Designer will make the following line look exactly like the title line. We then have to undo all the settings we created in our title line on the second line. By hitting the carriage return several times at the start of a new form, we can eliminate this rework. Notice the default font choices. Everyone's system has these default fonts mapped to real font names. This allows machines to select the best font for their environment. While many operating systems have most of the standard fonts installed, it doesn't mean they match your font. Select File, select Preferences. The Preference dialog box is displayed. Select Basic Notes Client Configuration. Select Default Fonts. A dialog box of mapped fonts is displayed. This list shows the fonts loaded on my machine, not necessarily on everyone else's devices. Notice that all the fonts are displayed, not just the monospace ones. If a user changes his fonts, making the application challenging to read, this default button will return all the entries to their original settings. Here's a list of the default fonts. I recommend using these fonts over picking a font that might not be loaded on your user's device. An unloaded font will either make a best guess or display blanks. If you select a font, pick the ones you know are installed on Macs, PCs, Linux, iOS phones and tablets, Android phones and tablets. You can see the challenge. While design elements can be placed anywhere on the screen, it's more aesthetically pleasing to organize the format. Select Create Table. Displaying the Create Table dialog box. How many rows do we want? Start with 10 rows. We can add and delete rows later if needed. How many columns do we want? Leave the columns as 2. Again, we can add and delete columns later if needed. How do we want to determine the width of the table? Start with a fixed table of 6 inches. Again, we can change this in the future if needed. What table type do we want? Leave the table type as basic. The other table types include tab table, animated table, caption table, and program table. These table types are covered in help or future lessons. Our first table is displayed in the Domino Designer. The first label is category. Type category. Add status and priority. Select the word to spell check. Select Tools. Select Spell Check. This function works just like spell check in the Notes email. Use spell check to correct priority. Add the new fields to the right of the table. There are 2 ways to add a field. Select Create, select Field. This action displays the field dialog box. Our first field is Category. Leave the type as field text for now. Select the X to close the dialog box. We've created our first field on a form. Create a field for status. Here's the second method to create a field. Near the top, we have a toolbar of action icons. Select the Create Field icon above. The field dialog box is displayed. Type status. Leave everything as the default. Select the X to close the dialog box. Create a field called Priority. Let's use the icon method again. Type Priority. Leave everything as the default. Select the X to close the dialog box. Our first form with 3 labels and 3 fields has been completed. Save the form. We have 4 methods to save the form. The first, select File, then Save. Use the keyboard Ctrl+S. Use the floppy disk looking icon. Select the X on the tab. Will prompt you to save the form. Select Yes, saves and close the window. While any of these work, I like the keyboard solution since I don't have to find it. Let's open the form again by double-clicking on this line. We can now make additional changes to the form. Before we make any changes, let's preview the form in our Notes client. Select Design. Select Preview Notes. Our form is displayed in the Notes client. For our first form, we're doing okay. Several items will need to be changed. Go back to Domino Designer. Another way to display our form in Notes is by selecting the Preview and Notes icon on the toolbar. Notice this displays the form in the Notes client just like the previous method. Return to the Domino Designer. One note about the icons: as you switch between machines, your laptop, work desktop, home machines, the icons may be in different orders. The menu entries are always in the same order. We need a row at the top of the table for a title. Insert a row at the top of the table by placing your cursor in the table's first row. Select Table. Select Insert Row. Insert Row always adds an empty row above the line where the cursor is located. Type in the form title. We'll call it Problems and Answers. It would be nice if the title were centered. Select the text. Select the icon for centering text. Since our title is still centered, increase the font size to 24 to make the title larger. That's looking better. Let's center this on the entire line. We have two methods to merge cells into one large cell. Use your mouse to select both the cells. Select Table. Select Merge Cells will do precisely that. Merge the selected cells into one large cell. Another method to merge cells still requires selecting two or more cells, but this time right-click to bring up an action menu. Here are Merge Cells again. Select Merge Cells. Notice that the two cells became one with the title automatically moved to the center of that cell. It looks so much better. Let's save the form using our keyboard shortcut, Control-S. As with many scenarios on computers, save often to prevent disasters. There is nothing worse than working on a Domino application for hours to only have Windows crash and lose all your work. Let's preview our work again in the HCL Notes client. Select the Preview and Notes in the icon bar to see how our form is looking. The form is progressing nicely. Go back to Domino Designer. Let's add a title field, a problem field, and an answer field. Skip a line to give us a little space. Type title as a label. Move down one line and type problem as a label. Skip a line and add the label answer. Add a title field. Select Create. Select Field. Type title as the field name. Close the dialog box utilizing the X. Problems and all their documentation may take up significant amount of space. Our column doesn't look wide enough for all that documentation. Below our label Problems, merge the two cells below. Select the two cells. Right-click to bring up the action box. Select Merge Cells. With the cell larger, let's add our field Problem. Select the Add Field icon. Name the field Problem. Click the X to close the dialog box. The field now can utilize the entire width of the table for details about the problem. As we add further information, everything below scrolls down as the details are typed. Let's do the same thing for answers. Select the two cells. Right-click to bring up the action box. Select Merge Cells. Select the Add Field icon. Type in answers for the field name. Click the X to remove the dialog box. For now, all the fields are of type text. We will change field types later to more appropriate field types. Before we save the form, look at the tab at the top. It has an asterisk displayed before the form name. This asterisk tells us the form has been changed but not saved. Press Ctrl-S and the asterisk is gone. Let me make a quick change to bring the asterisk back. Preview the notes in the Notes client by selecting the Preview and Notes icon. If the form has changed but hasn't been saved, the Save dialog box will ask us if we want to save the changes. Select Yes. This is how our form looks now in the Notes client. Let's add some data so we can see how it looks populated. The form looks good with some data entered. Select the X to get the Save dialog box. Let's not save this document yet, so select No. Go back to the Domino Designer. As we analyze our form, there are several pieces of information we want to track. Items such as author, date created, date completed. Let's add these to the right side of the table. To do that, we will have to add some additional columns. Right-click on the table to bring up the action menu. Select a pen. Select Column. This action will add columns to the right. Let's perform these steps again. Right-click on the table to bring up the action menu. select a pen, select column. We now have 2 additional columns on the right side of the table. If we wanted the columns to the left, we would have had to use the insert column. Who created this record? Add the word author as a label. When was the request created? Add created as a label. To identify when a problem has been answered, we should add the date completed to this form. Create the fields for these 3 labels. Select the Create field icon. Change the title to Author. Select the Create field icon. Change the title to Create Date. Select the Create field icon. Change the title to Complete Date. Save the form using Ctrl+S. Preview the form using the Preview and Notes icon. Some changes we want include having title, problem, and answer using the entire row. We should narrow the columns so the fields are closer to the labels. Let's go back to Domino Designer and make these changes. Flipping between windows can be monotonous over time. Having multiple monitors can help you be more productive. For the first item, change the column width so the fields are closer to the labels. Right-click on the column we want to adjust. Select Table Properties. Change the width from 3 inches to 1.5 inches. Select the next column to adjust. Let's repeat this adjustment to 1.5 inches for each column. Select the X to close the Table Property dialog box. Let's have the title field go all the way to the right of the table. We are going to use this process 3 more times to change problem, answer, and the form title. Select the 3 cells. Right-click on the cells. Select Merge Cells. Let's make the same change to our problem field. Now make the same change to our answer field. Lastly, make the same change to our form title. Save the form and preview it in the Notes client. Let's populate the form and see how it looks. Review the documents for changes we'd like to make. On the line Problem and Answers, let's remove the vertical bars. Remove the last line of the table. Let's go back to the Domino Designer and clean up our look. Delete the last line of the table. Right-click on the row to bring up the action window. Select Delete. We can select Row to delete that line. With our cursor in the row we wish to delete, select Table. Select Delete Selected Row. The row is now gone. Let's clean up the rows for problems and answers by selecting the cells and merging them. The line between priority and title, let's clean up using a different method. Select the cells, select Table, select Table Properties. The second tab is called Cell Border. Select the second tab. The section Cell Border Thickness changes the thickness of the border. A border of 0 will hide the border. We can select a group of cells and change the thickness to 0 so we can change them all at once. Or we can select individual cells and change the border thickness to 0 one at a time. I will step through this one cell at a time to see how we can control the changes. Because we are in the Domino Designer, we will see the cell borders as dotted lines. When we preview this form in the Notes client, the lines will be completely gone. Let's do the same thing for the form title. Select a cell, right-click on the menu action, select Table Properties, select a second tab, change the border thickness on the left, top, and right to 0, close the dialog box, save and preview this form. This form is getting better with every change. One change I'd like to make is get the letters of the words off the lines. Go back to the Domino Designer. How do we get the words off the domino borders? We have two methods. Either select all the cells in the table, or place the cursor in the table and select Table, Table Select, Select All Cells. We can see that all the cells have been selected. Select Table, select Table Properties, add some row spacing and column spacing. A former associate of mine started his career as a printer. His recommendation was to change the row and column spaces to 5/100ths of an inch, or 0.05. Since he was the expert, that's what I make all my tables. If you feel you have a better recommendation, please share it with everyone in the comments below. While we're in the dialog box, let's change the vertical alignment from top to center. As we examine the form, we notice all the lines are vertically centered. We also have space around all the labels for the fields, preventing them from pressing up against the borders. Let's save and preview again. I think this is looking good. Having the ability to collect data is vital to any business. We need the ability to examine the data that's been entered. We can accomplish this with a view. Let's create our first view. Every database comes with an untitled default view. Nothing says we have to use this view. However, it's already there, so let's use it. Give the view a proper name. Double-click to open the view. Select Design. Select View Properties. Type in by title. Let's go ahead and give this an alias. Call it Title. Just like on forms, we can add a comment to the view. We should add comments that would help future programmers. In this case, type my first view. Views are different from forms. In a view, we can see information in columns. Our first column is named # or hashtag. I typically use #. Go down and look in the objects, and we'll see the column titled #. Go to the right to the column value. You will see it is displayed the number in the view. Change the first column. Double-click on the column. The column dialog box will display. Change the title to Title. Change the width so you get as much of the title on the screen as possible. The width defaults to 10. Don't think of the width as 10 characters. Think of the width as a number 10. By looking at the width as a number, you will learn how different fonts will display in the column. So what does that mean? If we change the font size to something larger, we may only see 2 or 3, maybe even 4 characters on that line. If we change the font size to something small, we may see more characters, maybe 20 or more. So think of this width as a measurement and not as a number of characters. Change the width to 25 to get started. We can use the same method to save a view as we did to save a form. Remember, we have File Save. We have the Save icon in the toolbar. Lastly, Control-S to save the view. I'm sure you can guess which is my favorite. Just like in the form, we can preview in Notes client using the same methods. Select Design, select Preview in Notes. It would be nice if we had a document that we can see in the view. Select Create. Select the form we created earlier in the lesson, Problems and Answers. Let's fill in some detail for the document. Save the document. Something doesn't look right. We type test problem for working with the application, but we see the number 1. Go back to our Domino Designer. Go to the column value. We see it defaulted to the number in the view. What we wanted was for the title field to show up in this column. Select Field. Select Title. Save the view and preview in the Notes client. That looks much better. What other details would be helpful for this view? Go back to the Domino Designer. How do we add a column? Select Create. This menu doesn't look correct. Sometimes this happens when another area of the screen is selected instead of the view. Select the view. Anywhere will do. Select Create. Select Insert New Column. Notice the column went to the left of where we had selected. Not quite what we wanted. If we hit the Delete button, we can permanently delete that column. Let's try this again. Select Create. Select Append New Column. In this case, the new column showed up to the right of the title. If we had multiple columns appear, it would show up to the right of all the columns. Double-click on the column. Change the title to Author. Change the column value. Select Field. Select Author. What other details would be useful? Let's add the create date. Here's another method to add a data column. Double-click on the view header will create a column and bring up the column dialog box. Change the title to Create Date. Change the column value. Select Field. Select Create Date. Let's add a status column to this view. Double-click on the view header. Change the title to Status. Change the column value to Field. Select Status. Before we save, notice the asterisk in the tab telling us the view hasn't been saved yet. Save and preview in the Notes client. Control-S. Select the Preview and Notes client icon in the toolbar. The view is looking good. Let's make a little tweak. Let's start by reversing the order of Author, Create Date, and Status. Return to the Domino Designer. Let me show you a quick way to get the column headers in the correct order. Grab the Status column header by pressing the left mouse button on Status and drag the column to its new location. Let's do this again with Create Date. Grab the Create Date column header by pressing the left mouse button on Create Date and drag the column to its new location. Save the view and preview in the Notes client. What do you think of our first view? While it would be nice if we had the perfect view the first time, life seldom works that way. We must learn to crawl before we can walk and walk before we can run. This view is our crawl. Add another document so we'll have more data to see in our view. Select Create, select Problems and Answers, fill in some details. Save the document. Our next video will show you how to take your forms and views up to the next level. Look for the link of our next video below or on a card on the screen.